Hello, welcome to another tonalist landscape oil painting demonstration. This is your painter in residence, M. Francis McCarthy. You can call me Mike if you want to, by the way. And the painting I'm bringing you today is called Study after Georgianess. His painting was called Landscape 1888, so I didn't bother with the title. It's kind of an odd Inness. Very difficult to find a high resolution image of this online, but I basically took the little one I could find and blew it up in gigapixel. Shout out to gigapixel. It's also the cover, which has a beautiful reproduction of it, of a book called Georgianess and the Visionary Landscape by Adrian, Baxter, Bell. Awesome book I bought at the museum, the Young Museum, about oh my goodness, 11, 12 years ago, something like that. And they have a couple of Innesses there, the only ones I've seen in real life. Some of you that might live on the East Coast, you know, I think there's a museum in Montclair. I would definitely make my way over there if I was you. Anyway, I'll be reading some bits from that book momentarily, just jumping around. There's some awesome quotes and photos of him and things like that in there. A lot of challenges in this painting. For one, the size is an 11 by 14, so it's scaled up, and where you have more room to work, you also have more room for things that don't look quite right to become apparent. So that's one place where having a very simple basic grid, which you saw me start with, helps me out. And I originally got into doing that grid because so many of the studies I would do after someone like Inness were slightly off. Another challenge, like see this area I'm doing, we're doing my drawing stage right now, which was done with burnt umber. And so challenge, like he's just got this big dark expanse on the bottom. To do something like that and have it look interesting, have it look fresh, I ended up leaving quite a bit of the board color and underpainting color coming through. In his painting it looks like it was a lot more green, but I think what I did works real well, and you can be the judge when we get to the end of the video. Also, this composition is what I would call, it's actually really odd for him because it's quite square-ish, 11 by 14 being, you know, more of a squarish proportion than his usual, which would have been a golden mean type proportion like 24:36. Sorry about that. Bit of a frog in my throat here. This composition I would also term to be what I'd call an all in a row, and but he has a pretty neat strategy for dealing with that, and that was to put that dark shape on the bottom, and that's a trick of his that I've used, and I'm going to make a note to remember to use more often. I used it recently on a tree painting I did, and it really helped anchor that painting. It's a great technique, and that's one of the good things about doing studies after the masters. It will get you into doing things that you wouldn't do normally. So say if you're just working like I did, I just worked from photos for the first 5 years. Initially, you're doing very close interpretations of photos, and then after discovering tonalism, you know, definitely trying to inject imagination into things. And I went through a whole failure process, I guess you'd call it. At one point I was using a projector to project the photographic image onto my boards, thinking that that would be a time saver, but it actually, what it meant was a lot of really bad paintings, because most of the a lot of the things in your photo reference need to be excised to make a good painting. And this is one of the reasons why actually, you know, we're going to go into a tangent of a tangent. Okay, stay there with me. When I first thought about doing landscape painting, I was working in Photoshop all the time. I had this idea that I could take photos and, using techniques in the computer, create paintings in the computer. And all I was able to do, I did one that actually looked pretty decent. I have that here in my home office, but most of them just looked terrible when it became very apparent to me that I would need to work with an actual brush and actual paint to get the sort of looks that I really had in mind in most cases. And the real reason for that is because there's a lot of deletion that needs to occur. Photos are very different than paintings. Paintings, I always use this on, if you've been with me for, 6, 7, 8 years now, or however long we've been here, um, I use the analogy of baby food. Steak might be good for your baby, but if you feed the baby a steak, he's not going to be able to eat it. Um, you gotta grind that stuff up and feed him the baby food. And you're going, where are you going with this, Mike? Well, when the human eye scans reality, it basically takes a bunch of rapid fire snapshots and composes its own scene in your mind. That's why the eyes are directly connected to your brain. There's actually no gap there. It's one. You can think of your eyeballs as an extension of your brain. But they record a series of images that are all in focus, and then they feed you an image, and it happens very, very quickly. And we don't recognize it or realize it, but there's a little bit of fatigue involved in this process. And as a painter, your job is to remove that completely so that the image just goes in. Only the key things go in. And people can, of course, scan your painting and look for details and things, but really you should take that on board, that idea of creating in your images, your paintings, a synthesis of a scene. And there's many quotes. In fact, we'll go and take that as a entry into this book, because a lot of these quotes at the beginning are Inness talking about the difference between reality and a visual representation of reality. And like I say, I recommend you get the book. It is awesome. It is awesome. Oh, first quote in the entire book. You must suggest to me reality. You can never show me reality. Aha. The subjective mystery of nature in American landscape painting. He says, this quote from Georgianess: several years before I went to Europe, I had begun to see that the elaborateness and detail did not gain me meaning. And if you look at his earliest paintings, they're chock-a-block with detail. I have made this discovery on my own as well, and hopefully you will too, if you haven't already. I could not sustain it everywhere and produce a sense of spaces and distances with them. That subjective mystery of nature, with which wherever I went I was filled. You can't do it with detail. You have to do it with the impression of detail, and that's not to say you're an impressionist. They basically absconded that term, which applies to all representational art, which is that you don't actually get a good painting or image that a human being creates by slavishly copying every detail. And in our case, we have the advantage of photography. They did have photography back then as well, but it was very crude compared to the super intense detailed images we get now as moderns. Let's read a few. I'm just going to look for some quotes here. He was in the Emanuel Swedenborg. He had he said there's only two things he cared about. That was theology and painting. Theology being the theos is God, so the study of God. And it says a lot, because I am also very interested in these two topics. Yeah. So let's see. Here's another quote. Gradually, year after year, I discovered landscape painting as a science. Oh, that is the name of the chapter, I believe. Gradually, year after year, I discovered one truth after another until I had a scientific formula of the subjective of nature. My whole aim for 12 or 15 years has been to apply this. And this quote is in 1884. Now, this painting was done 4 years after that. Here's another quote. All thinkers are apt to become dogmatic. This is so true. Me too. And every dogma fails because it does not give you the other side. The same is true of all things, art, religion, everything else. You must find a third as your standpoint of reason. And that is how I came to work in the science of geometry, which is the only abstract truth. Now, a lot of what this book is about analyzing his theories of composition, and he had a definite theory of composition, which I choose to absorb through osmosis, because when you see his writings on it, he's kind of a fevered guy. It didn't make a lot of sense to me, I'll be honest. But you, I mean, I've done hundreds of studies, maybe hundreds. It's got to be over 100 at least, studies after Georgianess. Um, and one thing you really can tell when you, and then, of course, I do studies after other artists as well. One thing you can always tell is that his compositional approach is very different from everyone else. And one of the reasons I had to pull up the grid to get things accurate is because if my spacing was off just a little bit, it became very apparent to me that something was wrong, something was off. So that's all about the spaces. That's what he means by geometry. Let's see if we can get a few more quotes here. And while I'm looking, let's talk a bit about what I'm doing. So I put in the sky, I put in the blue first, and it was, a very knocked down blue. One of the challenges with making a study after painting like this is there may be glazing involved. And when you were trying to do a fresh color mix after a glazed color, it can be really difficult because that color will have a frequency and resonance that is not like an opaque frequency or resonance, and that's even though it's being reproduced in a book or on the screen of a computer. So, but you can get pretty close, and that's what I always aim to do. There have been times when I've tried to maybe paint things a little lighter and then do my own glazing, and there have been times when I knew I couldn't get the result without glazing. Yeah. By the way, this painting session is sped up about 18 to 20 times faster. There is a version of this in the members area where you're there with me. Took 4 hours. There you can see a little bit of me talking, and I'm talking all the way through. It's like you are there in the studio with me, so we're there together. We're making a painting, and if you think that might be a valuable experience for you, what I recommend you do is to open your wallet and get $6 out and join the members area. That's a great way to support me, and if you've been around any time at all, I'm about trying to help you out and about trying to get people that are into this kind of art, some education about it, at least from my limited perspective. And I really appreciate the support of the members, and also those of you that have stood up and actually purchased some of my paintings. There'll be a link to this painting underneath, and it looks pretty close. I waited till the painting was completely dry and hit it with a coat of liquid. This whole initial painting session, was just getting tired and not able to pull off all those little tiny leaf details. But where I left it, we're getting pretty close actually. Was at a point where it definitely at an icon size would look very much like his painting. So coming up, you'll see when I start in with all the little leaf details and little juicy bits. And yeah, that was best done with the painting being coated with liquid, so I could judge the accuracy of the colors, and also better for the video. Yeah, but like I said, I appreciate and enjoy your support. Just you watching this channel, that's great. Thank you for that. Thanks for spending the time. And I was going to find a quote. I did say so. I'm pretty good at doing Inness studies. This one was a bit more of a challenge because there's a lot of subtleties in it. There's subtleties in every Inness, of course. But one of the big advantages I had, and it wasn't intentional, I really wanted to go after this on a smooth board where I would have created the texture with my brush strokes. This was a textured board, but actually, if you look at the initial part of the video, instead of that real dark brown, I did more of an ochre-y type of tone, and that worked really well, and I'm really proud of this painting. And like I said, it'll be for sale in the store. I'm going to put a price of $399 US on that for 11x14. That's good, and for the amount of time I put into it, I think it's really good. And anyway, let's get into some more quotes. Ooh. Whoever thinks about Michelangelo's work being finished. No great artist ever finished a picture or a statue, and that's his opinion. But he definitely was famous for working over his own paintings and painting on top of the work of his friends and son. Whoever thinks of Michelangelo's work being finished is mercantile work that is finished, and finish is what the picture dealers cry for. Instead of covering the walls of his mansion with works of character, or what is better, with these works of inspiration which allure the mind to the regions of the unknown, he is apt to cover them with the sleek polish of lackadaisical sentiment, or the pluralities of impossible conditions. Ooh, salam. He didn't do that. He wasn't a commercial artist. Anyway, we're getting real close to the end. Thank you so much for joining me today. Like I say, 4 hours in the members area, but 4 hours well spent. Go do it. Go check it out. Especially if you want to get some of that Inness juice in your own work. Until I come back with another video, I've got some really good paintings coming up I'm going to share with you. Do me a favor, do me a solid. Take good care of yourself, your family, all your loved ones. Be patient with people that have views that differ from your own, and love your enemies, right? God bless you. Take good care. Stay out of trouble.